Aha. Aha. I have a question for you. You better answer. No, I have a question for you. Is this a tool or a weapon? I hear a lot of conflicting answers. I know when I walked into church this morning before you all came and our worship team was practicing, I walked down the middle aisle and I was carrying this and they said, "Oh man, don't make Paul angry." Because automatically they saw it somehow as a weapon. This is sold as a tool. And I've used this as a tool to break up firewood, to crack big blocks of wood so that I could put wood in my smoker. I've used this to dig out roots in trees that we were taking out of our yard. I've used it for all sorts of things. I've never used it as a weapon, thank you, and I never will. But I've used it as a tool. The thing is, we see tools like that, and we think, whoa, we could, and we see them in a context like this, and we think, man, this is not the context you would use a tool. But I want you to know that we have something at our disposal every day that can either be a tool or a weapon. And the way that we use it will greatly affect our relationships. And that's our tongue. That's the things that we say. It can be a very devastating weapon, or it can be an incredible tool to build up and encourage and strengthen other people. It just depends on how we've done it, how we use that tool. And so I want us to look today. We're still, we've pulled a lot of this relationship series out of Ephesians chapter 4. And so I want us to turn to Ephesians chapter 4 again. And I want us to look at verses 28 and 29. Well, that's not wrong. 29 and 30, I hope I said. Anyway, it may be wrong up there. It is. It's my fault. Go to the next slide. Here we go. We're going to go there. Here's verse 29. It says this: "Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up, as it fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear." The verse after that is, "And do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, by whom you are sealed for the day of redemption." But continue to look at this verse. "Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouth." Some of your versions may say, "Let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth, but only such a word as is good for edification, according to the need of the moment, that it may give grace to those who hear." I want you to see a couple things as we dive into that verse a little bit. It says, "Let no corrupting talk." How that sentence is phrased in the Greek actually puts emphasis on let no corrupting. It talks about and references that we need to watch every single word. It's not just talking about, hey, there's a whole bunch of words getting out there and I hope some of them are good. It's talking about as you talk, let not one single word come out as corrupting or unwholesome. How often do we take care with every single word we say? Or do often we just have conversations, we just start talking, and then you go, hey, wait a minute, what did I say? My brain was running, my mouth was running way ahead of my brain, and now my brain's got to come back and do damage control because I was just talking. So it says, let no unwholesome word. It's talking about, or no corrupting talk. It's talking about us watching every single word and being careful about them. Because the word corrupting in the Greek talks about being unwholesome. There are several ways that word that's there, corrupting, is translated in the Greek. There's several different meanings it has. And it depends upon the context of the word. And so one of the meanings of the word unwholesome or corrupting is putrid or foul, something that just smells really bad. It says, no, let no really bad smelling word come out of your mouth. Another way that it's used is to mean, make sure I get this right here, it means useless or unprofitable. Useless or unprofitable. So when we talk about let no corrupting talk or no unwholesome word proceed from our mouths, what it's saying is that every word that comes out of our mouth, we should be careful that it is useful and profitable. Useful and profitable. As you think about the things that you said this last week, was everything useful and profitable? Because, see, oftentimes we can start running off at the mouth, saying a whole bunch of things, and then we end up regretting. Have you ever said something you regret saying? Oh, my word, that is the worst. Even if I think I might have said something that might have been offensive, then I start obsessing about it and thinking, and what am I going to do? I need to go back and make that right. I got to make sure they didn't misinterpret what I said. And that's usually when I just start talking without thinking. And often a lot of us do that. We just talk and talk and talk and talk, and we don't think. You know, these unwholesome words, this corrupting talk can take a lot of different forms. Sometimes it's swear words. Sometimes it's gossip. Sometimes it's lying. Sometimes it's words that cut and hurt. Sometimes it could be inappropriate joking and things about things that we shouldn't be joking about. There's all sorts of different words. And I don't want us to focus so much on the negative things today and this particular word and that particular type of word. But I want us to focus today on the fact that we are to have no corrupting talk or no unwholesome word proceed from our mouth. That we need to be careful and intentional about the words that come out of our mouth, knowing that they are either going to be a tool that will build someone up or a weapon that will cut someone down. So, where do our words come from? I want us to look at that for a moment. Where our words come from. In Luke chapter 6, verse 45, Jesus says this: the good person out of the good treasure of his heart produces good. That makes sense, doesn't it? And the evil person out of his evil produces evil. Yesterday, we have a tangelo tree in our backyard, and yesterday it just produces like tons of fruit. So if you want some tangelos, let me know. But they're really good, really sweet, no seeds. They're great, and the birds and a few rats and a few squirrels love them. Problem is, Jenny has a vegetable garden in the backyard, and we don't want all those little critters being attracted to our backyard, so they'll eat those and then eat all the vegetables. So we said, let's strip the whole tree down of all, and so we totally stripped the whole tree of all its fruit, and now we have it all. So again, if you want some fruit, we have all that. But that tree constantly produces tangelos. We have another tree in the other corner of our yard that constantly produces lemons. So if I have a tree that produces lemons, what kind of tree is it? It's a lemon tree. Didn't know if you knew that. It's a lemon tree because it produces lemons, and we have a tangelo tree that produces tangelos. And the fact that it produces tangelos tells you it's a tangelo tree. If we have words, and what Jesus is saying here, it says, for out of the abundance of the heart, his mouth speaks. We can tell what kind of heart we have by the kind of words that are produced out of our mouth. And so if we constantly have foul, putrid language coming out, if we constantly have language that's coming out that's useless or unproductive or unbuilding up, the words that don't build up, we can tell that we have a heart that maybe we don't want to have on the inside. Again, our language is probably not necessarily a problem that is rooted in our mind. It is a problem that is rooted in our hearts and who we are. We don't have behaviors, we don't have words that don't come out of who we are. And so if we're ever going to get a handle on our words and the things that we say, we need to get a handle on our heart. But there's an issue with that. I want us to go to another passage of Scripture. It's James chapter 3, verses 6 through 10. James chapter 3, verses 6 through 10 say this. It says, and the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. Yeah, so he's not really trying to build your self-esteem here. All right, the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body. In other words, we have a lot of members of our body. We have hands and feet and arms and legs. We have a nose, we have eyes, and we have a tongue. And it says the tongue is the thing that defiles everything else. It messes everything else up. And it sets on fire the entire course of our lives. Do you realize how much of your life is directed by what you say? People's impression of you, how you come across. It is one of the things that determines how people view you and the direction in many ways that your life will go. And it says it's set on fire by hell. In other words, we know that the source of everything we say comes from our heart. And if we don't have God guiding our heart, that the things that come out of our mouth, like we talked about last week, there's some demonic influence with that. It says, for every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and sea creature can be tamed and has been tamed by mankind. But no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. Now that's kind of a hopeless statement, isn't it? For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and sea creature can be tamed and has been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. So in other words, if no human being can tame the tongue, why even try? Well, let's just give up. If we're not ever going to have control of what we say, then why even try? That would be what we would think almost, but because it says it's a restless evil full of deadly poison. We have a hard time controlling what we say. In fact, the scriptures say it's impossible. It says, with it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. My brothers, these things ought not to be so. He said we can't tame the tongue, but he says these things ought not to be so. So there is an answer, because if it ought not to be so, there is a way for it to be different. And the way for it to be different is this. The way for our heart, for our words to be different, is that our heart needs to change. If we want words, loving words to come out of our mouth, we need to have a loving heart. If we want gracious words to come out of our mouth, we need to have a heart that is full of grace. If we want people to know that we care about them, we have to have a heart that cares about them. And God says, we can't change the heart. We can't tame the tongue because we can't change our heart. It's interesting. There's times where I feel like in many areas of my life I'm getting better. Like I'm being more patient and I'm being more kind. But I know there's times where I'm sitting there and I'm smiling and I'm just being patient. And somebody's saying too many words to me, and I only have a capacity to hear this many words, and they're saying this many words, and I smile. But in my heart, I'm like, I can hardly wait to be home. Because there's this impatience in my heart, although my face is smiling and I'm appearing nice and friendly, right? Have you ever done that before? I'm not alone, right? And so on the surface, we look good. But there's an issue in the heart. I've noticed that myself in my own life as I deal with patience in my life. And I even had this conversation with Jenny a few days ago where I recognized that I'm having more patient behavior in my life, but sometimes my heart doesn't feel very patient. Because I can't fix that. But God can fix that. There's other people I've come in contact with, and in fact, there's been times, I think, in every marriage where you don't feel in love. If you've been married here and you've been married any amount of time, there's times where you just don't feel in love. You know, on the wedding day, they were beautiful, and they had this lovely dress. And getting into marriage, you wake up in the morning, their hair is a mess, and their breath stinks, and you're like, I don't feel in love. And all of a sudden, you get offended by some little thing or something, and you just don't feel. And so in marriage, if you don't feel in love, you don't have to do something loving, right? You can just, right? You can just kind of be a jerk, and even if you don't feel like it, you can't. You're going to have a messed up marriage that way. Sometimes you don't feel in love, but you do the loving thing. I've had people step into my office and say, yeah, I just don't feel in love anymore. And so that's why I've done this and that and the other thing. And I say, you got to stop that. Sometimes it's easy to just stop that. If you don't feel in love, that does not give you permission to do unloving things or to stop doing loving things. Oftentimes I've told people, you just start doing the loving thing. Even if you don't feel like it at all, just do the most loving thing you can do for that person in that time, in that moment. And then when you don't feel like it again, do that behavior again. You don't feel like it, do the behavior. You don't feel like it, do the behavior. And as you continue to act in loving ways, your heart begins to follow. Your heart begins to change. Your heart begins to be softened and feel in love again. Same is true with our words. We can't change our hearts, but there are some things that we need to do behaviorally, even if they're not true within us, that we just need to begin to say, that we need to begin to have discipline about, to begin to change our conversations, change the way we talk. And as we begin to practice the disciplines of doing that and saying different things and practicing different habits, God then begins to change our hearts to match our words. I want us to continue to look at Ephesians 4:29. Ephesians 4:29 says this, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such a word as is good. For a few things. It lists 3 things here, right? It lists 3 ways. So it's, in a sense, defining, by giving us the opposite, it's defining what corrupting talk is. It says, but only such as is good for building up. Only such a word as is good for building up. I remember being in high school, and there was a group of friends of mine, and there was like 4 or 5 of us, and we would all hang out. And there was this guy who started to work with the youth program, and he came in to lead a small group Bible study, and we were seniors in high school. And so it was these 4 or 5 senior high school guys, and we'd get together in one of our homes, and we would have a Bible study every week. And I remember we had a Bible study on this verse. And we were like many high school boys. We'd have these relationships. We'd drive around, we'd talk to each other, and we would just rip the heck out of each other. Just insult each other, and just all in good fun. And then we'd laugh, and all that sort of stuff. And we understood each other. We were good friends, and we'd make jokes about each other and all that sort of stuff. And it seemed to be kind of how we talked to each other. And I remember this college guy coming in and saying to us, so I've noticed the way you talk to each other. And he said, is that corrupting talk, or is that okay to talk to each other like that, or is it not? And I remember looking at that passage of Scripture. I remember looking at this word, good for building up. And I went, no, I don't think it is. And all my friends said, yeah, it's okay to joke with each other and insult each other. It's all right. It's all good fun. We all understand each other. And I said, no, it's not. It doesn't build up. And for the rest of the Bible study, we kept this debate going between me and the rest of my friends that it was good, it's no, it's not, it's good, it's no, it's not. And we never came to any resolution on it. But I did in my heart. And from that day forward, my conversations with my friends began to change. I knew if I, in good fun and just joking, insulted them a little bit back, that they wouldn't think anything of it. But I would. Because I knew in my heart that wasn't language that actually was intentional about building up. You see, unless we're intentional about our words building someone up, they're not going to, because it says to be careful about, remember, it's careful about every single word. And if the words we're using are words that build up, I want people to leave a conversation with me and feel better about themselves because of what I said. I want them to leave that conversation and feel more confident in who they are. I want people to leave that conversation and know that I value them and that God values them and that they have something to give if they've been discouraged, that they now feel encouraged. Sometimes those are difficult conversations. Sometimes that we can have a conversation with somebody we know very well and we can point out something in their life that's off. And so sometimes the building up word is a word that says, hey, buddy, I see something wrong with your life. It's not honoring God in this way. And I just needed to point that out. And I want to encourage you and I want to and just help you if there's a way I can help you change. And a building up word isn't necessarily always an easy word. But it's a word that builds them up, that encourages them. As we look at every single word and are careful about them, how do people leave conversations with you? Do they leave feeling more valued? Do they leave feeling encouraged? Do they leave feeling and knowing that they are valuable because of who they are and that you love them? So be careful about the words that we use, because no unwholesome word, no corrupting talk. The opposite of that is making sure that we are careful that the words that we have build up and encourage other people. And then it says this, building up as it fits the occasion. I love the way that another passage says it. It says, let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth, but only such a word as is good for edification, according to the need of the moment. According to the need of the moment. Do you realize everybody came in here this day, this morning, at this time in a different place? Mentally, emotionally. All of us have had weeks that we've faced different things. All of us come in here with hurts. We come up with hang-ups. We come up with disappointments. We may come in here happy because we've had a great week. We may come in here sad because we've had a hard week. We may come in here frustrated, disappointed, and impatient, angry. All of us. And so in every conversation, you're going to walk out of here and you're going to have conversations. And the words that you have are to be for the need of the moment, as it fits the occasion. Every conversation you have is an occasion. There's a need that you're facing. You're not just facing a person, you're facing a need. And honestly, I don't know what your need is. Sometimes I do, but most of the time I don't know. In order to have wholesome talk, non-corrupting talk come out of your mouth, you need to be attuned to people. To have conversations that are beyond just the surface level, where we just kind of know each other's names and talk about the weather and sports and hobbies, but we get into conversations where we understand, hey, you know what? I know you've had a hard week. How can I encourage you? How can I pray for you? How can I build you up? If we are to speak and meet the need of the moment, we need to know what the need of the moment is in the heart of the person in front of us. And quite honestly, I don't know what it is. A lot of times when I've been hurt by people, and I'm sure by you, when you've been hurt by people, I want you to know you've been hurt by someone who is a hurt person. Hurt people, right? And it's so easy for us to get in conversations and, oh, well, they hurt me. And to get past that, to get past yourself and get past your hurt and say, well, what about them? Where are they hurting? Why did they feel the need to say that? What was inside of their heart that caused that verbal vomit to come out on me? And how can I help them? How can I encourage them? How can I give a word that is not in kind to them, but is kind to them. It takes being outside of ourselves and being willing and able to look to the hearts and the needs of others. According to the need of the moment. That means that when we walk into a conversation, we're not just careful about what we say, but we're careful about who we say it to. You may be talking to someone who on the outside is smiling and having a great time and telling you, how are you today? Fine, everything's great. And then they get in the car and they cry. They get in the car and they wrestle with depression. They wrestle with loneliness. They wrestle with fear. And you don't know that. You don't know that at all. But are we willing to take a risk in saying careless things to fragile hearts? Every heart in here, in some ways, is fragile. And I think we need to treat people more carefully and valuable. That verse says, go back to Ephesians 4:29. Go back. Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouth. Well, it says, let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth, but only such a word as is good for edification, according to the need of the moment, that it may give grace to those who hear. That it may give grace to those who hear. We have our visions, our mission statement up on the wall. It says to live and love like Jesus, right? And then on the wall, we also have those 4 posters that talk about our core values of glorifying God, of being driven by grace, of growing in truth, and of living on mission. This really has to do with how we are driven by grace. God has given grace to us, and it says that you may give grace to those who hear. Do our conversations just elude grace and acceptance? Give grace to those who hear. You see, so often I think that if our agenda through our words is to give grace to those who hear, too often we speak with a different agenda. Sometimes we speak to make ourselves look better, right? Sometimes we speak so that I'll look good, and so that's either building ourselves up, putting someone else down so that I'll look better, lying to make somebody think that I'm more than who I really am. We do that on social media all the time. If you looked at everybody's Facebook feeds and Instagram posts, man, they are living life. They're living a much better life than I am. Right? Because all they're posting is all this great stuff they always do. And it builds them up and it gives us a false impression of who people are many times. And we try to do that verbally as well. We come in on a Sunday morning and we say, hey, everything's great and my life is good and had a great weekend and man, business is good and all that sort of stuff because we don't want people to think that we're hurting. And so all of our conversation and how we communicate just seeks to give people a good impression of us. Our conversation becomes us-centered. Our conversation needs to be other-centered. That it may give grace to other people. That they might walk away feeling like they are comfortable, like they are cared for. That it may give grace to those who hear. So if we're looking at these and we say only such a word is good for building up, are the words that we're saying, every single word, remember, is it intentionally being used to build someone up and to make them feel encouraged so when they walk away from that conversation, they realize that they are valuable in your eyes and God's eyes? Does our conversation, every single word, does it meet the need of the moment? Are we aware of the hearts of the people that we're talking to? Are we treating them and talking to them in a way that says we're guarding your heart as well? And is our conversation focused on others instead of ourselves? These are disciplines that we can think about, ways that we can begin to think about speaking. And as we begin to speak kind, uplifting, building up words that meet the needs of people, God will begin to change our hearts. And God is the one then who can tame the tongue. So what are some other things that we can, we are to speak the truth to people, right? There's a way to speak truth in a raw, unfiltered way that nobody's going to accept. But we speak the truth in love because we want it to be covered in grace. 1 Corinthians 13:1 says, let me get that open. Oh, there it is. If I speak in the tongue of men and of angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If we're to give grace to those who hear, it doesn't mean we can't say hard things to people. But it means that we cover them in grace. Because if you just come hard and fast at people and unfiltered, you're going to repel them. You're going to push them away. They're not going to hear what you have to say. And so you pray, God, give me a heart of love and grace and help me to communicate this in a way that's soft and gentle and yet truthful. Because people are just going to run away from you if you can't speak it with grace. I can also tell you this, that you can come with grace and speak truth to somebody who hasn't given you permission to speak truth into their lives, and they're not going to hear it either. That's part of being aware of the need of the moment. Do you have the kind of relationship with a person that they'll hear that from you in the first place? Do you have permission to speak into their lives? There's been times where I've wanted to say hard things to people, and I've said, hey, you know what, I want to say something, is it okay? And I ask permission from people to tell them hard things sometimes. And sometimes they walk away or avoid it, and I go, all right, then I won't say it. But oftentimes people say, yeah, go ahead. And then they've given me permission to speak into their lives and speak those truths, and still trying to speak them with love and with grace in their lives. The next verse in there says, in Ephesians 4:30, says, and do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, by whom you are sealed for the day of redemption. When we speak unwholesome, corrupting talk, it grieves the heart of God. Why does it grieve the heart of God? Because the things that you've said have wounded and hurt a person that God deeply loves. And God's heart grieves when we cause the heart of other people to grieve and to lose hope and to lose heart. So some practical steps we can take. Psalm 141 verse 3. Psalm 141 verse 3 says, set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth. Keep watch over the door of my lips. You ever prayed that prayer? Walking into a hard conversation, walking into just normal everyday life, walking into work, walking into the house. Lord, set a guard over my mouth. Help me to zip it, right? Because all of us have the little shut up light that comes on in our head, right? And it glows a little bit, and then it starts flashing really big, and a lot of times I just blow right through that light. You got to obey the shut up light, right? It's this big red light in your brain, and you know, and you shouldn't say it, and yet you go right through that light. And it says, Lord, set a guard over my mouth. Help me to obey the light that comes on in my head that says, stop it. Because that light is Him. That light is Him saying, I know what's in your heart. I know what you're about to say. Don't say it. Lord, set a guard. So, Lord, make me aware. Pray this prayer of Psalm 141:3. If you have a problem in speaking things that you shouldn't be saying, ask the Lord, set a guard over my mouth. And before you speak, consider what the other person needs. If you don't know what they need, err on the side of grace. Err on the side of grace. Err on the side of love. Err on the side of compassion. Too often in a society nowadays that is more combative and has more vitriol than I've ever seen in our country because we disagree with each other on political issues or whatever it might be. We somehow, as Christians, feel like we can take part in all of that. God has called us to speak with grace, even with those people with whom we disagree. It doesn't do any good to fight back and to be mean in return. Remember, in every conversation we have, especially with those who don't know the Lord, what are we trying to do? We're trying to give them the best shot that they have to know Jesus. Do the words that you use with people give them the best shot to know who Jesus is? So, set a guard. And last is Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. If I'm trying to control my tongue, why do I need to control what I'm thinking about? Because you cannot say something that you're not thinking about. You cannot say what you're not thinking about. So if something comes out of your mouth, it's because it went through your brain. And if we concentrate on keeping our minds on the things that are honorable, just, pure, lovely, commendable, excellent, worthy of praise, those are the kinds of words that will be coming out of our mouths. I want you to know that God wants us to be people of grace. Remember that it may give grace to those who hear. Because God is a God that gives us grace. God is a God that knows everything about us and still showers us with grace. He doesn't deal with us according to our sins. And so we need to be those kind of people as well. You know, I talked about, we want to make sure that everybody has their best shot of knowing Jesus by what we say. And that's what we want for you at Simi Community Church, that if you're sitting here this morning and you don't know God, you don't know this God of grace that we've been talking about, that knows your heart, that knows how you have wandered away from Him and maybe not followed Him, but He still loves you anyway. He wants to forgive you for those things. And He can through Jesus Christ. And so I want to just offer you to this morning that if you do not know Jesus, I want you to know He's a God of grace. He's a God who can forgive. And He can do that through Jesus Christ. And if you want that and you want a relationship, you want to know His grace personally, that all you need to do is ask. And it would be a simple prayer that just says, God, I know I'm a sinner. God, I know that I've wandered from You, but I want to know Your grace. I want to know Your forgiveness. Will You forgive me? And will You help me to walk with You? If we invite God into our life like that, He promises to come. He promises to forgive. And He promises that we will know His grace in our lives. I want you to pull out those Connect cards that you have, that each of you filled out a little bit this morning. And on the back, on the front of it, there's a box that said yes to God. If you're somebody this morning who said yes to God, who's saying yes to God, yes, I want to be forgiven. Yes, I want to know this God of grace. I'm on a part of my spiritual journey where I haven't been with God, and now I want to know God. If you just want to say yes to God, I would encourage you to check that box. I also know that there's in this room, there's people on all sorts of places on their spiritual journey. And maybe you're just getting to know who this God is and have some questions. There's another box on the front of that card that says, would like to know more about what it means to follow Jesus. And if you check either of those boxes, there's somebody who will be contacting you this week just to maybe answer your questions and talk to you about this God of grace that we have that can love you and can forgive you. So encourage you to fill out those cards and then to place those in our offering as we're about to take our offering this morning. And you can put those Connect cards in there. And And I also just want to remind you too here, typically on the first Sunday of every month, which is coming up in just a couple weeks, we do a benevolent offering. We have a benevolent fund at church, and what that fund does is that it is oftentimes we have people that come into our church from off the street in our community, sometimes from within our congregation that have a need. And we're able to meet that need. We're able to share the love of Christ with someone and to meet a real need in their life. And so we have a fund that does that, and it's supported by y'all. And so I just want to, we don't often talk about it, but I just want to let you be aware of that we'll be taking that offering in a couple weeks. On the first Sunday of every month, we do that. So I just wanted to mention it so you'd be prepared as that comes up in a couple weeks. Just something on top of if the Lord prompts you, on top of your regular tithes and offerings, if you say, yeah, I want to do that, you can write a check, you can do something like that, but whatever, just mark it so that we would know what that is. And we'll be doing that in a couple weeks. But just to make you aware of that as well, it's another way that we as a church community want to show grace and meet needs to the people around us.